Welcome to the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume Jouvencel, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show. Will, welcome to Consulting Leaders. Happy to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Let's jump straight into it. So tell me about the fantastic world of advertising, behavioral economics, and consulting. What got you into all this?
So I wasn't originally planning to get into this. I was planning to get into public affairs. And I worked at somewhere called the Institute of Practitioners in Advertising when Rory Sutherland became president, who's very focused on behavioural economics and advertising. And I found it really interesting. It was just at the start of my career. And that set me down a path of kind of applying behavioural economics, behavioural science to advertising, to marketing. But it was actually just a little bit of luck that he happened to arrive while I was there.
I like it. So like many consultants, you arrive in here by accident, but then embrace it. So what would you say is the core problem that you help organizations solve today?
So I think the biggest problem is lots of companies are trying to understand people, how to influence them, how to develop the right products for them, how to price those products, how to communicate with them effectively. But people are really bad at describing what they do, why they do it, what they're going to do, and what influences them. And so lots of organizations are building their entire marketing strategy, a lot of their business strategy around asking people what they want, what they do, and the answers aren't accurate. And that's even true of understanding their own staff, the other people they work with, that you get very flawed information if you just ask people and trust them. And so behavioural economics gives us a new way, another way into that can often be a bit more accurate.
So actually, you know what? I'm going to ask you this. It's been a while that I'm spreading maybe something that didn't exist, but I learned from an influencer in France who turned out to be a bit of a scam at the end. Anyways, he told that story that I found very interesting, and somehow it made lots of sense that was true or not. So here it comes. When Netflix started, they were asking you to, say, hey, what do you prefer? What do you like to watch? Like, what are your preferences? And people would answer, and they would say like author movies, like small, medium budget movies, like things that would be a bit original and make them look good. And people weren't sticking to Netflix. Then Netflix stopped asking people. Well, actually, they continued asking people, but they weren't taking into considerations their answers, and they were instead basing themselves on what they're doing on the platform. Because the people who would say, "Hey, I want to watch author movies, like Cannes Festival movies, and so on," ended up watching Fast and Furious 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in a row. And it's like, let's just give more of what they are actually consuming versus what they are saying. So it's such a thing, like we want to say like, hey, yeah, we are into this and we do that, but actually our behavior is completely different. And you help companies basically do a Netflix kind of shenanigans?
We do. I'd say there's kind of two things there. One, in that instance, some people will give answers that they think make them look better, that are who they want to be. And so in that instance, it's actually there's a discrepancy between what they really do and what they want to portray of themselves. But beyond that, people also can't give accurate answers, even if they were really trying to. The way our memory works, the way we think about information, there's inbuilt kind of biases that mean you don't give accurate information. And yeah, we really help understand what people really do and what influences them. With the Netflix example, it's interesting because once someone's on the platform, you want to give them the content they'll watch. But if you're thinking about how you attract them to the platform, you might appeal to that part of them that thinks they want documentaries, thinks they want mid-budget movies, because they like the idea of signing up to that. And so actually the reality and the answer people give you gives you different but useful information that you can use.
I love that. So tell us a bit more about who you help specifically with this. Like, do you have a specific ICP, a specific niche? Who's the decision maker? Like, who are you going to help solve that very problem?
So generally speaking, we work with marketing teams. That's often our first point of contact. It can be marketing director, head of brand. We also get brought in by product teams, and more, particularly with kind of SMEs, the CEO founders are bringing us in. I think marketing teams come to us because that's usually the area of the business most interested in understanding people, developing comms, kind of product. And then I think founders and CEOs and other kind of senior leaders, there's a lot of people interested in behavioral science, and they're interested in bringing in companies that can help them understand people and change their company on the basis of that. And it's particularly ones that are trying to move to being more consumer focused, I think, and less product focused, which is often a journey a lot of companies go through at the start. So that there is quite a wide range, and we work across every vertical that's kind of consumer facing or B2B, because actually understanding people applies everywhere. So it's not that much more relevant for one industry or sector than another.
Okay, so that's going to be a very interesting one then. So the way I see consulting, I like hyper niche, hyper specialization, in the sense of you need to have back surgery, right? And you have two options. One is with a surgeon who's done 10,000 surgeries, 1,000 brain, 1,000 heart, 1,000 guts, whatever, 1,000 back. And the second option is a surgeon who's done 10,000 surgeries as well, but only back surgeries. Who is it that you're going to go to, and how much of a premium are you going to be willing to pay to the second one? So, especially since you're in behavioral economics, like, how do you get the attention of your ICP and of your decision maker when you can serve any niche?
So I think what we would say is, first of all, it doesn't matter if your research agency, your consultancy, your partner specializes in your sector. If their approach to understanding people is wrong, the answers they will give you are wrong. And fundamentally, they can be experts in your sector, but if they're not experts at getting genuine understanding of people, that it won't work. And so you need someone who can do that. I think that's the most important thing. I would also say surgery is often a very specific element. I'd probably relate this a little bit more to post-surgery when you're trying to recover, and you need probably mental health care, you probably need physiotherapy, you probably need medication, and you need to be able to judge all those areas, and probably the person who understands the patient best will be able to say what mixture of physiotherapy, mental health, medication, other treatment they need. And I think consultants, generally speaking, are much more that. We need to not just advise the client on one small area. We need to advise how that applies across their business, because things don't happen in isolation. And therefore, being a specialist in understanding people, but then how you apply that to marketing, how you apply that to organizational change, is potentially more important than just being a specialist in their sector.
Fair enough. But then how do you get their attention? So, because I think there's going to be the educational part of things, right? Then the problem awareness, and then solution awareness. But for you specifically then, what has worked for you and your business to get the attention of those marketing teams to be like, hey, yeah, we need like behavioral economic support here, and we're going to go to Will? Like, what channel do you use? What has worked for you to get the right attention of the right people?
Yeah, so we've got a few different methods. We're, as a consultancy, part of something called Mediaplus and Service Plan that provide creative media, product kind of website consulting to lots of clients, and we get brought in by them. So that's obviously a fantastic avenue for us. We've got the website behave.co.uk, which, if you're trying to look for a behavioural consultancy, is fortunately very strong and one people often visit. And then it's personal connections as well, going out there, speaking at conferences, going to events, putting out content. I would say historically, there's always been a strong interest in behavioural economics and behavioural science by a kind of proportion of people out there at businesses. So that gives you an initial in with people that can be very, very strong. The final thing I think that we're good at, and that we try and say separates us, is that we work really hard to understand the client, and our background in marketing means that everything we do is enacted, is to drive real change. And so if we can show them the benefits of the type of work we've done, people are very, very interested when you can make it tangible and real. And I'm often surprised that a lot of other consultancies struggle to do that.
That is a very nice spot to be in when demand is not an issue. And that's very good. So it's a bit more about how you transform those conversations then. How do you go from a speaking engagement, any marketing and SEO, how do you move from that to a conversation, to a second conversation, to an SOW, a letter of engagement? Like, what does the sales motion look like for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it partly depends how a lead comes in. If we get recommended by someone to this person, to this organization, because they've got a specific challenge, you're starting at a very different point than if you meet someone at a conference. Broadly, though, I think it's always the same. We spend 80% of the time asking questions and 20% of the time talking about ourselves. I think some people go in and go, let me dazzle you with our solutions, our products, our technology. We very much start with, what is your problem? What's the challenge? What's keeping you up at night? What's the difficulty? And then, do we have an approach that we think could help solve that? And the more time we work understanding what it is that they're struggling with, what the challenge is, what their business context is, we can then give them a solution or a proposal that is incredibly tailored to them. And that's how we like to approach it, because I actually think even if you've got industry experience from earlier, every client has their own context, their own situation. Even if they aren't different, they feel different, or they are. And the more you can tailor it to them, the more interested they are in it.
So your sales motion consists of very much tailoring the approach to clients. So basically, you start to walk together with them even before you have closed the deal, so that they can see the value, see how it works for them. And then the natural next step is like, hey, let's just do this on the longer term basis. Is that the idea?
Yeah, and it can vary. So with some clients, we'll start in quite a small area. So we can help with kind of CRO, website optimization, or a project to understand the audience, and often that's quite an easy in because it's not that expensive. It gives you an opportunity to work with them, and from there you build the relationship over time and expand it into a much wider range of areas, and that can be really good. But we also work where people have kind of a large project that they're interested in, and we'll pull together a big kind of RFP and a full proposal and have multiple meetings with them to develop it. I always think we actually have multiple different processes depending upon how someone comes into us, whether we've had an existing relationship, in how we work with them, and then the size of the first project they're looking to sign off. The most important thing is we try and get as much face time with them, try and understand them as well as possible, and have the option of starting small and building from there and showing the value of what we do. And that seems to work really well. And we give people quite a lot of freedom with how they do that. There's not a very set process. It's relationship based and kind of understanding them and their needs.
Yeah, I like that. One of the things that we often talk about on this show is if you're able to start building the actual deliverable in the sales cycle, start working with them, basically, of course, without giving the whole thing, because you want to get paid for it and you want to, put in the hours that will allow you to get the results for the clients. But if you're able to keep on building that trust and that authority in the sales cycle itself, this is definitely how you win, because people are like, yeah, I see how that makes sense. Like, now it's just a question of how do we make this happen instead of should we make this happen. One of the big part of growing a consulting business, Will, is to retain customers. So marketing doesn't seem to be a problem, which is great. How do you retain? How do you, farm? How do you make sure that one engagement turns into another with the same client, and another, and potentially, parallel ones? How do you manage that?
So I think there's two key elements. The first, which you'd like to be the most important, is we very much build our proposals not to just produce a report and leave it there. We put a lot of time and effort into how are you going to enact this and being involved in that process, whether it is running workshops with kind of the board across senior stakeholders, having meetings with all the teams that can take the learnings and apply it, and staying involved quite a bit after the kind of work has been done as part of the proposal, so that the way it's applied is as important as the kind of insight and work you do. The benefit of that is that you get to meet a lot more people, you get to engage senior stakeholders, you build more relationships, and you also stay long enough to make sure they see outputs from the work that you've done and they see the benefits. And if you can do that effectively, you will nearly always find that as they go and as you work with them, you'll discover new challenges they have, new areas, and you can quite naturally talk to them about the way you can bring solutions into that. And so it almost happens and is built into the way we do the project, because it's so outcome focused and so focused on maintaining a relationship with them for quite a while to make sure the project is enacted successfully. The second part is there's a very intangible world of relationships out there, and you've got people who are good at building relationships, going for lunches, maintaining kind of contacts. And I think where that's important is sometimes clients will naturally have a period where they don't need any kind of consulting work from you. It could be for 3 months, it could be for 2 years. And the challenge there is, how do you just stay front of mind so that when something comes up again, they get in contact with you? And that really is just about, in a non-intrusive, friendly way, trying to kind of maintain contact, give them useful bits of insight occasionally, tap into kind of relationship or meeting up with them. And I think that's quite a skill that some people have and some don't. We've got kind of teams, the marketing team that maintain contact and do content and things like that. But actually that ability to build a personal relationship is how you get business again from clients that have fluctuating demand. And the first one is if larger organizations consistently need help, you've shown the value and you can continuously find the next area you can help them and maintain work all the time.
I like that. And I think it's very honest. Sorry, wrong English pronunciation here. It's very honest to also acknowledge the fact that sometimes your clients don't need more consulting work and they actually need to go and implement what you've helped them develop as a strategy. Now, there is always the play of like, hey, we can also help with implementation, which is itself, in my opinion, a complete different service, but still something that consulting practices can do. But yeah, I like that a lot. I think that helps keep the relationship honest, honest, and value-based. And you can get recurring business thanks to that, because they're like, yeah, there is going to be another consulting need. Let's bring Will and his team again. I like that. A bit of a curveball question for you, Will. I don't know if you're much fond of cricket or baseball. What's your number one challenge? What's the thing that is challenging you the most, that once you're going to crack, you're going to take the whole business to the next level? What would that be for you?
It's interesting. So I think probably I'll give a personal challenge and a business challenge, if that is okay. The business challenge is, I think the best work for clients is bespoke, tailored to them, understands the nuances of the business, takes time to get under the skin of their consumer. That is quite time consuming, and it's hard to make that something you can very efficiently and quickly run as a product across multiple clients at scale. And so we are trying to find a way that we can get the right balance between growing quickly and providing kind of a work across more and more clients, while retaining that bespoke element that really understands them and their needs. And I think if we can crack that, then the opportunity to grow is huge, because the reality is at the moment we take a lot of pride in our projects, but there's only so many we could do in a year, because it requires a lot of input from very talented people, and that's a natural limit. But I'm also loath to turn it into too much of a product where every problem looks like a nail because we've got a hammer. And then the second part, personal, is I spend a lot of time advising clients on how to focus on the long term, on the big decisions they need to make. And as with all things in life, it's often a lot easier to advise other people on what they should do and not follow it yourself. And with lots of pitches, lots of client projects, lots of areas you just need to manage running a consultancy, you often find that you're focused on the day-to-day, the delivery, the growth, and not necessarily thinking about the 2 to 5 year kind of plan. And maybe I should be spending more time thinking about how we combine a bespoke service with a scalable service than I am helping clients and help working on pitches. But I find that as a personal thing, you always get pulled back in because it's probably the reason why you started and what you enjoy doing most.
I like that. That's very, very interesting. Like, how do we keep on delivering on the short term and do the very thing that's got us to start this business, all whilst projecting the 2 to 5 years? I think it's interesting. Anything is scalable. It's just that some things are easier to scale than others. And here, I'm not talking about your business specifically, Will, but like through you to everybody listening to us. I think there is also, like, if your thing is really bespoke, ultra tailored approach and services, well, the question becomes, how do we scale this? And it's for sure going to be more people, right? But there's definitely a way to do this. And I understand the temptation of having maybe a lower ticket product that is a bit more productized, to speak, and less bespoke. But there is lots of value in like scaling the high value ticket. Just takes a bit more time and people, I guess. But that's indeed a very interesting challenge. What's ahead of you? What's some of the biggest opportunities that you see in your industry, especially with everything going on technology-wise? I guess for behavioral economics, this is a paradise to play in. What's the biggest opportunity you see in your space, Will?
Absolutely. So, I mean, it's pretty hard to answer this without saying AI. I would say I think that a lot of people are focused on the reasonably short term with AI and not enough on the long term, and that's the big opportunity. I think there's a Bill Gates quote, which is, everyone overestimates the impact of a technology over the next 2 years and underestimates it over the impact of the next 10. And I think people are caught up in their natural search traffic going down. They're caught up in this idea of, I might be able to have 30% less staff and still deliver the same product or service. But what's interesting is actually in the next 3-5 years, how is AI going to fundamentally alter large aspects of consumer behavior? Are we going to find that in 5 years' time, 40-50% of people under 40 have a close AI friend or partner? And what's that going to mean about people's behaviors, where they get recommendations from, how they kind of just exist in the world? What's going to happen to social media with that? Is AI going to transform how we get health information, how we plan and buy all of our food, the kind of really big changes that it will bring? And I think that's an incredibly rich area because you're trying to understand changes that are going to happen in the future with consumers that aren't that good at telling you, but it's going to be massively important. And I think there are a lot of business out there going, we can help you technically now improve your ranking in GEO and kind of help you kind of, build AI agents to, have fewer staff, but not that many going, how is your industry fundamentally going to change in the next 5 years? And what do you need to do now to be ready for it? And I think that's an area we really want to lean into with clients so that they can start preparing now for what could be quite a seismic shift.
Teach us something that we can leverage as B2B coaches and consultants when it comes to marketing using behavioral economics. Like what could you, I don't know, we still have like 3-4 minutes for this interview. What could we take home and implement in our business leveraging behavioral economics? Will, do you have, I'm putting you on the spot here, but do you have something that we can use?
Absolutely. So we run something called Behave Copy, which is a bit more towards the product side. You can make your website, your comms, your advertising work better by incorporating some biases into the copy. An obvious one is kind of social norms, saying that what you're offering lots of other people have done already. And that can have surprisingly big impact on making those comms more effective. The only thing you need to do is a bit of work to understand who the people are that's reading it. So social norms, for about 95% of the population, that works really well. If they think other people are doing something, they'll do it. It doesn't work on about the 5% are the richest, most well-off, most powerful people, because they like to think that they're different from everyone else. And so you actually need to bring in communications about how kind of this is an opportunity that others won't see. And so I just say, go read up about behavioral biases, read up about how they've been incorporated into copy, and you could find that your website conversion goes up 30%, your response to CRM goes up 20%. And it's a relatively simple change that can have a big effect. And if you do that and you see a success, then come to us, because we can do the proper audience insight that will tell you the best biases to use in your copy that will have the biggest effect. And you'll probably get to double the impact that you saw doing it yourself as well. So it's something you can apply straight away, and then something that with experts, they can make it even more effective.
Will, ladies and gentlemen, Will, if people want to find out more about you, see what you do, where they go?
Go to www.behave.co.uk and you can find out a lot more about what we do and all the types of services that we offer.
We'll put all the links in the description. What I can say for sure is that you've gained at least one new connection on LinkedIn out of this interview. Will, me, I just added you. Thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders.
Thank you ever so much, and have a good day.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders Podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.
How